And we are heading towards the second day and first session. And the topic is research proposal and thesis design. And the expert Professor D.M. Divakar will be delivering. Professor D.M. Divakar is a professor and head division of economics and also a former director at the A.N. Sinha Institute of Social Studies, Patna. He has he basically he's from economics and he has been recipient of many scholarship and award winning, and he has many papers, more than 80 papers, and also guided many scholars, and also done many research projects on contemporary relevance and policy issues sponsored by various agencies like Planning Commission, Ministry of Rural Development, ICSSR, UNDP, and he's also a member of many professional associations, and he has been also the member of many official committees and professional bodies. Like member governing body, National Gandhi Museum, New Delhi, and many more. And he's been working, or he's been he's very expertise in the field of research and how a proposal can be designed. Because sometimes we know what exactly want to do it, but we cannot frame it. So I think our expert Professor D.M. Divakar will tell you about how a proposal can be designed, what are the things you need to taken care, and also how you decide your objective. Everything will be decided in this session. So now I would like to invite Professor D.M. Divakar sir to start the session.
Good morning to everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, I am audible.
Yeah, so straightforward, I am going to a screen and then sharing my PowerPoint presentation. Instead of having my picture, it is better to have the pictures of content. Friends, in this forenoon in the morning, we are going to discuss on the research proposal and thesis design. It is very important when one has to proceed towards research. So how one should go for a proposal and what should be the thesis design, that becomes very, very important, and especially for those who are the newcomers and starts research. I have planned this presentation like this. Introduction, and where 3 W are very important: what, why, and how. What is about the problem, why this problem, and how you can analyze this problem. These things can be understood. Then second section could be identifying research area and selecting topics of research. Developing a research proposal, essential elements of a research proposal, research planning and precautions, thesis design, and finally it will be a summing up. And after that, we can have a discussion on the presentation that I am going to do in next few slides. You know, when we are looking to a research proposal, we need to have a kind of perspective and approach, how we should proceed. How could we see the world? Unless we have that kind of a defined perspective with us, we cannot move on. And Professor Randhir Singh, a renowned political scientist, he said that it's not important that what you are saying, but it's important that from which theoretical ground you are saying, where you are. If your theoretical ground is defined, then your consistency in literature and your consistency in streams and school of thoughts becomes more important. Therefore, one has to look into the perspective and approaches that defines the research agenda, how one should move. Before going to those details, let me share a few prelude. That is, if you are looking into the world is not like just taking anything in isolation. Interaction of nature, creature, and technology is very important right from the beginning of the world. When we are saying that interaction of nature, creature, and technology, we need to be very careful that even we don't think of development, still there was interaction between the nature and creature. Say, go back to the primitive stage. People were living on hunting, gathering, staying in the cave, and surviving with and in the nature. And in that stage also we had a technology. Of course, that technology is very primitive. We were plucking the flowers by hand. We were taking, our forefathers were taking fruits from the ground by hand itself. So we did not have anything else in the name of technology, but direct physical interaction between the nature and creature. But later it grew, and to cut short the development of the technology and interaction of nature and creature into now it is now in the space we are looking into, and not only in a space, we are replacing human limbs, and now we have the artificial agent, intelligence, through which we are looking into the interaction of nature and creature. So therefore, interaction of nature, creature, and technology, this trio is very important when we are looking to understand the world where it is. And that trio creates a basis and a superstructure of power that decides forms and contents which vary through time and space. It is not that it is always there, but it decides through time, this time and space, and it is varied through time and space. And basis and superstructure becomes very important. For example, I am giving you a very simple example that if you need to convert an egg into a bird, then what you need? You need a certain temperature that mother bird gives to the egg, and then it is transformed into a baby bird. But in that stage also, a certain level of temperature is required, which is given by the mother. And therefore, if you are making an artificial reproduction center of eggs converting into bird, then you need a kind of atmosphere where eggs can be kept, and then in that temperature, that is transformed into eggs. Here, the eggs are basis and temperature is the superstructure. That means ambience and environment is a superstructure. But do you think that if you can put a stone and the temperature and ambience is there, so that a stone could be converted into bird? No, because basis is not there. Therefore, basis becomes more important, and that follows the superstructure. It decides at every level. Take anything in the world where we find the cause and effect relationship, you will have to find with basis and superstructure through which we can decide. And that decides the power structure also. That decides the forms and contents of power structure also, and which varies from varies through time and space. When we are saying varies from time and space, because everywhere the development is not the same. Sometimes at some places history starts earlier, and other places it starts later, and that is why you have Delhi as a metropolitan city, and you have a Kalahandi as the most backward districts. Coming to Bihar, you can find Patna is most highest per capita income, and Shivhar is another district which has the lowest per capita income, 7,000, and Patna is 63,000. So it has a historical genesis and procedures for development, and it varies through time and space. Yes, that can also be seen through many approaches. Summarily, we can decide those approaches: liberal and radical. When we say liberal, that means those who have powers have the duty to develop the powerless. And that means powerless is a problem. those who are resourceless, they are the problem as an object. And they can be empowered through agencies and institutions providing inputs, welfare and development of powerless. Governments have been doing so many programs for the development of poor, development of the backward regions as an object. It can be a simile of, say, a carpenter has logs of woods, and that carpenter can make from that woods a table, a chair, an almond. So that wooden log is an object, and then it is being improved by the agencies. At this stage, it is a carpenter, and you can generalize it in any agency, like NIT is an agency which makes students sensitive. Universities are agencies through which they are transforming the individuals. Society is an institution through which they can decide the norms and do things. Government is an agency which creates things differently. Similarly, you have a radical approach. The radical approach is different than liberal approach. When liberal approach decides things within, I mean, as an object, and then it is transformed by an agency. Radical suggests that powerless is also the part of solution as a subject. So participation becomes more important than just as a receiver. That becomes more important. If you look this perspective into this trio, nature, creature, and technology, you will find that they have relationship and interaction, mutual interaction among all the three, and this creates a worldview of liberal approach and worldview with radical approach. The second part we have to look into is the nature and structure of social sciences. We know that the source of knowledge generation are many. Maybe in the beginning, the folk arts, which still continues. Maybe the literature through which we understand things. Many times when you did not have the written history, we had the oral history, and we learned from that oral traditions. After that, when we started learning to write and putting records, then we have the records through which we go into the source of knowledge. And again, those knowledge were not neutral. There is one set of knowledge which is a Victorian thesis. That means rulers have written the history of war, history of victory, and through which they have made their history. But there is another, and through which they have the expansion of the area of their control, which we call the kings have the emperor, and they have their own kingdom through which they have made their space wider and wider. The other aspect is of the victims. Those who have been resisting, those who have been victimized, they have their own history. That means history from below. If you read the Gulf, history from below, that makes you all the total subaltern history and full of literature and full of records through which you can understand how the society is seen as in the eyes of victory and in the eyes of victims. These two have the different worldview. Those who are in the power and those who are on the other receiving end, they have the different perspective to understand one subject. So therefore, researcher has to look into the specific dimension and approaches through which one has to go. And to cut short these explanations, we have nation states and we have democracy. Some of the parts we don't have democracy. They are the socialist blocs. They have their own way of looking. We have the multi-party system. We have the single-party system. And somewhere we have the people's participation. Somewhere still we have the kingdoms and kings. And the another event that we can flag in here is the society where we have reached had major three revolutions. That is French Revolution, October Revolution, and Industrial Revolution. French Revolution injected the value of liberty, fraternity, and equality, now which is acceptable to everyone. Before French Revolution, Liberty was not a matter of right. Equality was not a matter of right. Fraternity was not accepted standard norms for the society. After October Revolution 1970, again, it became clear that people cannot exploit the weakers forever. There is a resistance, and through resistance, they can be liberated and they can have their own way of living into the society. So they gave a clear value addition to the social movement. Third is industrial revolution in terms of technology. After industrial revolution, we had so many development in terms of scientific inventions and discoveries, then the development of technology, and so many things, through which we have reached a very comfortable life. We have reduced our hardships, which I flagged yesterday as well. Then we have world wars as well. First World War, Second World War, which made the world to decide whether they can survive with fighting each other, or they can have their cartel. And after Second World, they have reached to a consensus that they need a world advisory government, which you have World Bank, IMF, UNO, and many bodies of UNO. That is a kind of world consensus cartel through which advisory governance is being declared time and again. And then participants, different nation states, they participate in and they resolve that they agree or disagree with those aspects. So now we have the world governance that way, and we have globalization and market through which we operate. So therefore, if when we are going to look into the idea of research, we need to see into these dimensions through which we have to make up finer details through can reach to a particular. Now coming to identifying the area and analytical framework. Here I am putting you some questions and very brief one-word answer. Why should we research? After all, there is a question that we are doing research, we do PhD, we do projects, we write papers, but why we do so? One simple way could be that you have your good career and you can have your job, but that is too simplistic. Basically, this is a process of knowledge generation. And knowledge generation can be with the wider mind and it can be with the captive vision. If you are taking the wider mind, then you have a different perspective that we discussed earlier. If you have the captive vision, then it is reduced, and it can be reduced to the level of the cut and paste as well. So one has to look into that. Why do we research? Generally we do research to addition of knowledge, generation of new knowledge, or validation of knowledge. What was decided earlier and found earlier is still valid today or not. Why should we? For that we need some kind of empirical evidences, facts. So what we do, we collect data. Why we collect data? We collect data for objective analysis. That means there must not be biases. There must not be biases of the individual researchers to collect data just to prove what he wants to say, he or she wants to say, but what he or she can generalize as a researcher, as a cause and effect relationship, that can be generalized, and that depends on the kind of intervention and the data collection that you do through your samples, through your data. Now, when you are looking into those objective analysis, again, I will take you back that value and perspective, which are socially relevant, are very important. It's not that others are not important. Many things have their time scale. For example, the Higgs boson theory, which has come after 100 years or so, but you don't think that that was not important that day. So the short-term and long-term complementarity is very important when you are doing for research. Therefore, value and perspective, which are socially relevant in terms of short-term complementarity and long-term perspective for the future scope, those socially relevant issues are very, very important. But that depends on the nature of states and policy, because every state, every time, they may not promote what you want, and therefore that have an impact on the funding, the support, the institutions. When there is a government which believes in war and expansion, they will go for arm industries, and they have more development on science and technology towards arm industries. But when you have a government which is pro-people, they will focus on the basic needs, that is foods, shelter, clothes, education, health, and so many things which is the comforts for their citizens of the country, which becomes prime important than anything else like arm industry or so. So policy becomes more important, and that depends on the nature of a state. When we are looking into the area, of course, we need to look into these value and perspective as well. Another point which we flagged in earlier, that the level of technology, time and space, that becomes also very important when we are looking into identifying the area analytical framework, because everything is not universal. So if you are taking up your study, whether you are considering the level of technology at which you are doing, maybe in terms of data collection, in terms of understanding society interaction, in terms of analyzing the data, and so on. And of course, since it is not universal and you have many constants, maybe the constants of time, maybe the constants of resources, therefore, you have to delimit yourself at what particular time frame you are going to identify your area and problems. Also, you need to decide, because the people and society are also not homogeneous. So you have to identify what kind of people you are taking into consideration for your research area, which kind of society that you are taking, they varies. So if you have to understand the, say, paddy farming, then you have to go to the area where paddy farming is being taken over. If you are interested in the smokers, then you have to look into the area where the smokers are found. If you have to look into the liquors prohibition, then the area where the liquor prohibition is on. Similarly, you can have many such examples through which you can look into the people, society, and institution that interacts to implement those values and policies. Therefore, with all these backgrounds, you need to have a choice of framework. These frameworks could be descriptive. Descriptive is a basic thing that you can just describe what it is. So when we say in the beginning that what, why, and how, so you can start with what. And if that what is sufficient to make your understanding clear, you don't need to go to the rigorous analytical data. Out of those discussions, we can, if you can find vividly, you can find why. If you can find how, then you can, through description also, you can move. And maybe that the very raw data can also be helpful to understand things, and through which you can move for your research. But it becomes difficult if you have the smaller number of sample. If you have the large sample, descriptive may do. But you have the smaller sample, and researchers do have the smaller sample because of their resource constants, the time constant, the manpower constants. And therefore, they need to adopt an analytical framework where the data can be analyzed through analytical framework, and they can go for selecting the people, society, institution, level of technology, time and space, nature of a state, policy, value and perspective, and so on. When you are trying to identify the research area, up to last slide, we have discussed that you can select a broad area of interest. When you have a broad area of interest, you will start looking into the conceptual clarity. From where you can get conceptual clarity? For which you have to make mapping the research resources. That is bibliography in the area of interest. Normally, I am sorry to say that in most of the universities, we have found that students are asked to collect bibliography at the end of their work. It should be very much in the beginning of their work, that they should know that the area where they are working, how many people and what kind of work people have done. And let me share with you, India has, although the world has, but the India has also very systematic indexing of those resources. A guide to Indian periodical literature. is very small one, but this is available even in our AN Sinha Institute library. And this is, if you start from today, you can find this resource at the AN Sinha Institute until 1966. So 1966 onward 2020, you have that index of social science related indexing of the literature that India has done so far in social science research. Therefore, this is one. EPW has another index. University has another news and index for the research mapping. And therefore, if you look into those, then you have a mapping of resources that which kind of work that people have done. So you are not in blank now. Now you are with some of the information, some of the data, some of the area where people have worked. So you are a little bit exposed to the dimensions that people have worked. But still you are not conceptually clear. So what first you do? You go to encyclopedia. If you have decided the area, go to encyclopedia. And in this encyclopedia, understand the historical importance of that concept. Whether that concept has been, how it has been developed, what kind of development has been taken place in that concept. Once you have the conceptual clarity, Encyclopedia of Social Science, Encyclopedia Britannica, Encyclopedia of International Social Sciences, and so many documents are available as a reference material through which once you have a conceptual clarity, then you pick up the bibliography of those that you have seen in those resources and make clusters of those bibliography thematically link those bibliography resources. For example, if you have to look at unpaid wage labor, and if we have to again confine it to unpaid wage labor, to women unpaid wage labor, those who have the background of economics might be knowing that non-economic activities are not considered the wage labor. For example, if mothers are working for their children, they are not economic activities. But if you are hiring a maid servant, that becomes the economic activity for the same work. And in such a situation, a vast area where women are still unpaid and considered unproductive, if one has to look into, as one of my students is working on it, if one has to look into this area, then you have to look into the how it can be measured, what could be the quantum of that unpaid wage women labor, and what could be the impact in the economy. So these three dimensions you have. That means first is measuring dimensions, second is the dimension of quantity, and third is the impact. On these three dimensions, you can look into the research material, that what people have done and what they have not done. Still, you can't do everything. You have to delimit the scope. Maybe that you are interested only in the measurement. Maybe that you are simply interested in the quantum of that. It can be in other area also, maybe in agriculture, maybe in industry, maybe in the service sector, maybe now in corona pandemic impact. The size of corona pandemic, the impact on technology, the impact of researches, the impact of social living and conditions and interaction, employment, lockdown, and so on. So policy and otherwise also. So you can have so many dimensions. You have to delimit that scope of the area of your interest. You know, it is very important. Delimiting is very important in social science research, or for that matter in any research, because you have to know everything. But you don't have time to know everything, so you have to delimit yourself. That then it is not important that what you want to do. You have to decide what you don't have to do. It becomes very important. If you are doing something, what you don't do, that becomes more important. Then you have clear space. And once you have decided and delimited with the do and don'ts, then you start reviewing the selective literature to identify gaps and problems in research. If you go by literature review, normally what is there? I have found the people, they have been working for the review of literature. They start enumerating the names. Mr. X has done this, Mr. Y has done this, Mr. Z has done this, and so on. This is not the good way of reviewing the literature. Good way of reviewing the literature, that you pick up the themes that I have said earlier. You pick up the themes and find out the literature on that themes. what is all about, what kind of hypothesis they have raised, what kind of questions they have started, what kind of hypothesis they have formulated, what kind of indicators they have developed, and how data they have collected, and what kind of findings they have, and ultimately what they could not do. At the end of every good paper, at the end of it is written, it is the limitation of the paper that we are doing this much only, and this is left for the further research agenda. Once you have identified the gap, that becomes the area of your research. So from general to a specific, now you are moving in, and now pick up one of that gaps area, and you select your PhD topic. That becomes your research topic. You start from there, and then start developing research proposal. Once we have selected a topic for research, we need to describe the contours of problems followed by relevant debates. These relevant debates are also divided into many dimensions. It could be problematic, it could be theoretical, it could be exploratory, it could be methodological debate, it could be the indicators debate, it could be the debates of the finding analysis tools, and then how results are coming up. So every aspect you can have certain dimensions through you can decide and review the literature of the relevant debates. Once you have identified the research gap, conceptual problem is identified, methodology and exclusion and inclusion of indicators, that becomes more important. Still, once you have the identified variables, you need to operationalize. For example, if we try to understand that employment is a big problem, and for that you need some kind of employment opportunity, but that cannot be answered anyway. You need to conceptualize, identify the indicators, and then find out whether in terms of policy variable you are trying, whether in terms of action programs you are identifying, or whether you are trying to do at the level of implementation, or you are trying to do at the level of the capacity building where you are now. So that kind of capacity building for individual becomes more important to start these processes, and through which you can operationalize the variables to ask for data. For example, if capacity building is a question, you can't ask that whether your capacity building has been done. No. Question will be asked that what kind of capacity sensitization program was there? Whether the class was good, in class which kind of content you are taught, what kind of experiments that you have made, what kind of exercise that have been given, what kind of feedback situation continued, what kind of discussion that was there, and every level of operationalization becomes important to make it objective so that you can ask question and get direct answer. That becomes very important. And if those review, when you have understood the data gaps, if you understood the gaps in application, analytical tools, analysis, etc., with this understanding of gaps, you delimit the scope of your research further. If you remember, first stage delimiting was in broader area of theme. The second stage delimitation is at the specific area of research. Still in a specific area, say for example, if you are working on education. So it's not economics of education or technology of education or say social dimension of sociology of education or psychological dimension of education, whatever you can see, you have to understand the learning tools and techniques, TLM, teaching and learning methods, or maybe the outcome, or maybe the institutional arrangement, or maybe the finance. And these are different dimensions in which one of them you can focus and you can find some details for your study with time and resource constant that you have. And now, once you have come into that point, then set objectives of your study, what you want to do and what you want to find out of it. Say, for example, if you are trying to say the finance of the education, if you are looking into the finance of the education, that means the trends, how the finance has been given, the kind of schooling system that you have, and the financial arrangement is there. And in such a situation, still, what kind of policy of finances, what kind of budgeting provision, what kind of private and public partnership, how government is looking into, who are the major beneficiary, and so on. There could be a number of questions on just on finance related issues. That too, it could be primary level education, secondary level education, higher education, education of the technical education in terms of engineering and other dimension of science, maybe medical and botanical and many others. So we have to set the objective for the set objectives of the study specific. After that, when you have set the objective, in the light of literature, we need to formulate our hypothesis for research in conformity with the objectives. Always remember that literature, the source, the theoretical aspect that you have, the kind of findings that you have seen in the review of literature, that becomes your basis, and on which you have tried to formulate hypothesis for research. And of course, again, that hypothesis should be in correspondence with the objective that you have still set. So objectives, hypothesis, and the literature support, that becomes very important for hypothesis. Once you have identified the hypothesis, identify research questions, how you will deal with those hypotheses, how you will test. Suppose if the hypothesis is that education is important for poverty eradication. This is the broad hypothesis that you have. And this education is an important tool for eradication of poverty. If you have to understand this, then what you have to understand, what is the situation, what is the structure of education, who are participating, who are not participating, those who are participating, whether they are poor or they are non-poor, control group or the general, open, and then you try to understand those indicators for data collection, operationalize them. After that, the nature of data and data collection design comes in. For example, if you have to go for primary data, whether you have to go for the secondary data, again it depends. And there are agencies which they provide secondary data. Just yesterday, NFHS 5 round data has come, and there is a number of indicators even for the state of Bihar, how Bihar has fared good or bad in terms of malnutrition, in terms of infant mortality, in terms of the fertility rate, which has reduced from 3.45 to 3%. So like this, this is the secondary level of data. You have the NSSO data, wide range of unit level NSSO data. You have the census data, unit level census data, even at the village and household level. So there is one way of looking into it, the already collected data, a massive data you can collect, and you can have desk work through which you can deal with the questions, with the problems, with the appropriate analytical tools. The other could be that those area and gaps where you don't have data, so you have to calculate, you have to generate ratio. So you have to generate the data for those gaps where, for which data are not available, for which we go for primary survey and primary data collection. It could be horizontal, it could be vertical, it could be through different regions, it could be within region in different strata of society. And then through the different strata of society you are looking into, then you have to look into whether those society, persons in those society, how they are interacting, what are their asset level, what are their cultural level, what kind of situation they are living. And then if it is not possible to take all of them as a census, that you can do a sampling and you will try to find out the representative of that. Normally, when you go for sampling, sampling has one important condition, that it can be homogeneous. You can find a sample from the homogeneous group. If you don't have the homogeneous society, then you, if you have the stratified society, then you take the stratified sample, and within a strata you try to find out the representative, and through which you can look into it. For example, if we are entering into a village, the village is with the multiple castes, multiple religion, multiple level of assets, that means the land ownership. or multiple level of facilities and amenities through which you can make a strata. And from every strata, if you look into have some kind of representation, then you can have a different level of data set, and through which you can understand the problem and you can move. So in synopsis, you have to put those things, that what kind of data you are going to collect, what kind of methodology that you are going to do in data collection, what kind of tools and techniques that you are going to apply, administer for data collection and analysis. Hence, if you are looking into the elements of a synopsis, here is a slide where you can make a synopsis with these elements: problems, review of literature, critical gaps, a scope and objectives, hypothesis, research questions, indicators, methodology, nature of data, source of data, statistical tools and techniques for data collection and analysis, justification of this study, limitation, tentative chapters, and bibliography. This becomes elements in a synopsis. Once you have a synopsis, that means up to 25% work that you have done. Now you know where is the resources. Now you know what you have to do. Now you know what kind of activities you have to pursue. Of course, this is a tentative. And when you will be in the process of doing the research, you will be improvising on your strategies, actions, and that is why it is written tentative, through which you are moving for a firm decision in due course of development of the study. If you have the broader theme for research paper, then you can have to write a research paper. The tentative sections are why is the noise? There is a noise, please. May I request you to keep calm for 2 minutes? Please.
I request Abhishek Kumar to mute your audio.
Please put off your audio for a few minutes. Now we are coming to the closure.
Sit here.
Or writing a broad theme for a research paper. Again, for research, you know, when you are doing research, now in UGC it is mandatory that you have to publish 1 or 2 papers varying through the institution in a refereed or good journal, through which you can publish your research paper. Then only you can submit your thesis. So before that, you need a kind of research paper to develop and publish. For that, again, broadly, when you are looking into the synopsis, broadly the themes will be like this, but a little variations will find in the research paper. You need to decide a title page, acknowledgement, summary and abstract, background of problems, debates and gaps. All the minuscules are there. Theoretical formulations, through where your idea and argument is grounded, hypothesis, research questions and indicators, methodology, then data, quantitative, qualitative, whatever you have used and how you have processed, then findings, analysis, then you have the conclusion, what you have come out of your analysis. Maybe that if it is a policy prescription, you can go for recommendations. If you have a larger data set and the larger table which you cannot give in the main text, then you can have an appendices and bibliography. So this way you can have a research paper, develop a research paper out of your research and for the completion of your procedures for pre-submission PhD thesis. If you have to make a broad theme of the thesis or report, again, tentative sections are like this, not much different. It is again with the same perspective. If you have the title page, acknowledgement, summary and abstract, executive summary, if it is report, then you have contents page, introduction, theoretical formulation, debates and gap, hypothesis, research questions and indicators, methodology, data, whether it is quantitative, qualitative, or many other dimensions, processing, finding and analysis, conclusion, recommendation, appendices, and bibliography. Like this, you can make a design of your synopsis, research papers, and thesis or report. Thank you so much for patient hearing and giving me an opportunity to explain. Now, if you have any question, query, most welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I think I will ask our participants if they have any queries. I will unmute everyone, and I request the participant to ask one by one. I think now everyone is allowed to ask. So
what I will do,
yes,
Dr. Bera, what I will do, let them ask questions. I will note down, and then at the end of it, I will summarize all the answers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
May not entertain many questions. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I ask the participants. Please tell your name and put your questions.
Silence.
I am asking all the participants. All the participants can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Please ask. Tell your name and I can put your question.
Sir, actually, I don't have any question, but I was very much interested in sir was telling about how to write the previous literature. Actually, how not to write the previous literature. So he was telling about some very important points, but I was unable to get them properly. Sir, can you just tell us one more time what actually we have to concentrate on while going to the literature?
Okay.
Previous literature.
I will. Yes, I will do it. Your name, please.
Sir, my name is Shaheen Begum. I am from Tirupati, sir. Mahila University, Tirupati, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much. Very important question. I will come to you just after collecting the questions from other participants.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any more questions from the participant? Please ask. Any queries, any doubts?
Sir, one question from me. I am Suman Kumar. Sir, could you elaborate, sir, operationalization of variables, operationalization of indicator?
Okay.
Any more questions? Please ask. You may not get any chance.
Sir, good morning, sir. I am Abraham, sir. Sir, could you please explain how to find out the research gaps in review of literature? That is one point, sir. And you can also explain how to present the review of literature chapter in PhD thesis. So that is so national, international, or regional, or what is the procedure, sir? So could you please explain that, sir? Thank you, sir.
Any more? All the participants.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. This is Pooja Agarwal, sir. Sir, my question is, like, when we are doing the literature review, what we actually found that when we are going to the previous research papers, there we find that there are several bibliographies and there are several references. So, sir, how will we know that which among them are relevant and which are not, sir?
Okay, so you are talking of the cross reference.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? Any more? Please ask, because you may not get any chance. So whatever queries or anything you want to ask related to this proposal, please put your questions.
And sir, could you please explain the difference between recommendations and suggestions, sir?
Your name, please?
Sir, Abraham, sir, Abraham.
Oh, the same person, yeah.
Any more questions?
I am Bairagi Patro. wish to question qualitative data collection and quantitative data. How shall I differentiate? Qualitative data and quantitative data.
Okay, okay. It is noted. Any more questions?
Sir, good morning, sir. This is Subba Reddy.
Please tell your name and question.
Yeah, this is Subba Reddy, sir. General Subba Reddy from Lakhrid College of Engineering. Is it possible? I mean, is it necessary to include future scope of action in journal papers? Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? Okay.
Okay, the
sir,
first stage we can begin.
Yes, sir, you can.
We can begin the first phase and let's see if they need the second phase, and we can go for it.
Yes, sir. Yes. Sir, please one request. I think if you are not sharing any document, can you please stop sharing the button? Just click the stop sharing button.
Oh yes, that I can.
Yes.
Now it's done.
Yes, sir.
Sharing button is done. No, it's not there.
Your voice is audible, sir.
Eh?
Your voice is audible, sir. I think your video. I'm unable to see your video.
Now I am putting video on. Now I am putting video on. Earlier
yes, sir,
I was
yes,
not putting video on because I had to go with our content that was more important than my face.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, go ahead.
Now I am taking one by one. Sahina Begum from Tirupati, she has asked the review of literature, how one should go to review of literature, and what kind of review literature is necessary, whether you should take the past literature or not. If you have to, I have already said that it depends on the nature of a study that you are taking in. For example, if you have now the corona pandemic and you want to study it, you will not find any literature. So you have to be exploratory. You can start from scratch and then you can find the data from the field. But still you have some kind of, it's not that in vacuum. People have worked on corona and COVID flooded the literature still. So people have done, you are not in the clean slate. You are still with some of the evidences that people have done so far. So if you are doing research, it is expected that you are exposed to those work that has been done, and then you are trying to understand. When you are doing that review of literature, 5 elements are very important. One, that whatever people have done, what is all about, what they have done. So you have to review that whether they have identified the problem properly. It is not that you just enumerate that what they have done, but you have that what they have not done so far in that problem identifying itself. Second stage comes the kind of literature review that they have done, the debate and discourse that they have placed. Maybe that they have enumerated some of the debates, but they might have left the important debates and they have just put some of the debates in the namesake. So whether they are the major important debates are included or not, that again becomes the second part of the review of your literature. Third part becomes the kind of hypothesis and research questions they have made. If the review of literature you are exposed, if the problem that you have seen and the kind of concern that you have raised, if they have not taken up in terms of those questions, then again you have your role that you can add up the questions that they have not asked and they should have asked. If it is the third stage, then fourth stage come of the analytical design, the data, the tools, the analysis, the findings that they have made. So what they have made in brief, and then your opinion, whether they have justified what they have started in the beginning, whether in terms of problems, debates, research questions, hypotheses, what they have discussed, whether they have incorporated when they were doing their research in analyzing the facts. And therefore, your job starts from here to identify the gaps. Where is the gap? Gaps in problem identification, gaps in debates, gaps in hypothesis formulation or review of this research questions, indicator gap, and then also gap in statistical tools and analysis. All these we are come up with one article with a review of literature. Now the second article is not again with the same. If the same theme is there, only a few lines of addition will be in the same theme that the first has done, whether they have been similar or they are different. Again, you don't have to deal with all those things for everyone. So thematically, you can add up a number of together and you can make a review. I hope that I have. And
yes,
also,
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
And also, I have answered this review of literature for others who have asked this question. Second is by Suman Kumar, who is asking about the operationalization of variables and indicators. You know, if one has to look into, if one has to look into in the level of variables, what is suppose what is your area of interest, Sumanji? If you are looking into, say, education, I have told already. If I have looking into the education itself does not give you anything, any clue. Now you have to look into an individual. If education is an instrument for poverty eradication, then if you are so again poor, you have to ask whether you are primary education, where you are literate or illiterate, where you are with primary education, where you are with secondary education, where you are in the public school or where you are in the private school. Like that, you can delineate with the number of questions and through which you can deal, and then you can operationalize how you can ask data. It's not what is your education? That cannot be a question. Got it? So,
I request the participant not to put your
please listen carefully and then you can discuss. So I think for the person who was Abraham was asking about the research gap. When I was doing the research review, responding to Shahin Begum, I think I have answered Abraham as well. How to identify the research gap in terms of problem identification, in terms of review of literature, in terms of this data collection, in terms of analysis, and then what they have not done so far. And here starts your addition of knowledge and task to add something in the knowledge. Next is Pooja Agrawal, relevant bibliography and the cross reference. You know, yes, you have when you start understanding a broader area of research, say for education. So first stage is who have worked on education. That is the first stage. Whatever the literature is available, you just make bibliography of it. Second stage comes now that out of those bibliography, what you want to do, whether you want to do the primary education, you want to do secondary education, you want to do girl education, you want to do education status of deprived section of the society, you want to do education at the backward regions, or you want to do education in the public schools or in the private schools. It is about the primary education. Similarly, you can go the other educations. So if you are doing the primary education and particularly focus on certain area, then you delimit your clusters. You just go ahead with your relevant. leave others. Like that you can make, and then when you are doing letter, also you can see what they have used as a bibliography. Part of it as your cross
इसमें कितना
reference.
क्वेश्चन पढ़ाना था? देखिए सेक्शन ए में 5 क्वेश्चन दिए 2-2 नंबर का, ठीक है? इसमें कट कर दे।
Please,
Section
छह करना है।
I think cross talk will disturb us to understand things. So now the another question by Abraham about recommendation and suggestions. You know, normally we find that when you are doing recommendations or suggestions, both are almost similar. But if you are doing so, you need to do this on the basis of the analysis that you have done. It's not that whatever you are thinking, you are no. What is coming out of your fact analysis, empirical evidences, that only you can recommend or suggest. You can't suggest anything that is ideal you are thinking. No, you can't jump your scope. You have to say something on the basis of the literature that you are doing. So the kind of analysis that you have done, out of that what is emerging in the analysis, that only you can generalize for a recommendation and suggestion. Am I clear, Abraham? The other is by Mahapatra, qualitative data and quantitative data. I hope that this 5-day course will have details about the qualitative and quantitative data. But let me tell you that it depends on the kind of study and set objective that you have set. Many things you can't do with the quantitative data. You need a qualitative data. Say, for example, if you have to look into the honesty, how can you judge honesty? So then at one stage, you will operationalize the honesty, whether somebody is filling up PA bill correctly or not, whether they are making some bogus claims or not, like that. So you can operationalize. But still, if you have to see the colors, if you have to see the any type of those information or set of data which you cannot present in terms of quantity for those, say, religion. For these purposes, you have to go for the qualitative information. And I think now the people have the narratives, case studies, and many other things to discuss the qualitative design of analysis and through which one go. So quantitative and qualitative are not coterminous. You can go with both qualitative and quantitative, and that can supplement each other in terms of analysis and discussion. Are you okay? Now coming to Subba Reddy. Subba Reddy is asking about the future scope of general paper. It's not necessary, but it is good if you are aware of that, because when you are delimiting your paper, everything you cannot do in one paper. So you are making one paper and identifying the scope, and you are delimiting that you are not jumping your scope. And then you are suggesting that if somebody wants to look into these matters, for example, if you have identified 20 variables important for a discussion in health indicators, but you are concentrating on 2 or 3 variables. Say for either you are concentrating on infrastructure, or you are concentrating on finance, or you are concentrating on the kind of delivery services have there, the kind of skilled workers that you have, if any number of questions. But you cannot do everything in one paper. So you are doing something and you are suggesting that the rest can be analyzed in another discussion, another paper. Therefore, you can move on for and asking the people to do good for and generating an addition of knowledge and generating the new analysis for the society, for the betterment of understanding of the knowledge with the scientific inquiry. Thank you. I think the kind of questions I have tried to respond briefly to them, and hopefully rest will be taken care of by the specific classes on this method that will come in next 3-4 days. Any more questions?
Sir, I don't. If any questions from the participant, you can ask. Is there any question from the participant? Anyone else? So,
hello.
I think.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
This is Aragesan from Chennai. Sir, could you please elaborate about hypothesis formulation?
Hypothesis formulation.
Yes, sir. Hypothesis formulation.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I have, your name, please.
Aragesan, sir. Aragesan from Chennai.
Allegation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Allegation, you know that we have already discussed about hypothesis formulation, but I am repeating again with an example. Say, for example, that you have studied, you are trying to study the education as a problem. How education can be important instrument for eradication of poverty. And that you are not doing directly, you are just, first you have a descriptive knowledge about that, what is the status of education in Chennai, Tamil Nadu, and then you are trying to understand the different level of study that people have done so far. And whether the education has been instrumental to eradication of poverty, you want to understand. Then you have to develop some hypothesis in the light of literature. People have said that education has made the society better. But whether empirically it is good or bad, or empirically it is proven or not, for which you have developed a hypothesis. What is that? It will be a theoretical statement. Theoretical statement is a cause and effect relationship of a problem. Say, for example, when we are saying that education is a powerful instrument for eradication of poverty. This could be a finding of somebody's paper or somebody's hypothesis, thesis, and somebody's book. But whether that is valid in Chennai or not, for that you have retained this hypothesis. That could be one. The second kind of hypothesis you can make, say, for example, today now is the corona pandemic. Now you can say that in corona pandemic situation, education is powerful instrument only for those who have access to online education. This could be the another way of reformation of your hypothesis. That is, hypothesis has now the two dimensions. One is null hypothesis and other is alternative hypothesis. Null hypothesis says no. That means there is no relationship between education and eradication of poverty. That is null hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis is the education has, primary education has very important role, or education has very important role in providing, in eradication of poverty, even in corona pandemic. Those to them or to those who have access to online education. Now this way you have formulated a problem either with the null hypothesis or with the alternative hypothesis. And then you have collected data. For example, the data that you have with primary education, the deprived section of society, and girls, or head of the family of that family, and then their education background, and then their income position, their and you have a control group, and you have an open group, and through which you are trying to find out the data in the two sections. And you find a correlation, whether these have a positive correlation. If there is positive correlation, now you can move further on discussing things in terms of regression, understanding the cause and effect relationship. Again, if you find the multi-quality, you will go for the principal component analysis. Similarly, you can move on. And therefore, you can create alternative hypotheses, and through which you will test those hypotheses by generating questions, and then you have your, whether you reject this hypothesis or you accept this hypothesis. Once you reject this hypothesis, that means what earlier people have done, is not true for the area of research where you are doing. And if you have accepted, that means that is true. If it is null hypothesis and then you are accepting, that means there is no relationship. If there is no null alternative hypothesis, then there is a relationship. And in this perspective, you have the rejection and acceptance have implications on your findings and conclusion. Am I right, Elena?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Got it, sir.
Any more questions?
Any questions, please ask, because we have another 3 to 4 minutes. So if you can ask any questions, please go ahead.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It is excellent session, sir. We learned a lot from this session. Sir, I am Abraham, sir. I have another small doubt, sir. Is there bibliography is required in PhD thesis, or references are enough?
I think reference when you are making, if you have listened me properly, reference you are making out of that you have used in your contents later. But initial stage, when you are identifying your broad area, you are collecting bibliography. Initially, you are collecting bibliography. It's not at the end of it. Generally, in the universities, I have found, unfortunately, they are doing bibliography at the end of it. No. In the beginning of research, you have to collect bibliography. At least 1,000 bibliography in the area of interest that you are doing, you collect. Then you make a systematic distribution. And after that, you have to make another set of bibliography when you are making your specific topic. Don't forget that you can use the bibliography of only those references that you have made in your analysis. That could only be the part of the bibliography at the end of your research. You should not use those bibliographies which are not used in your text. Am I clear?
Yes, sir. So that means no need to write all the bibliography at the end of at the end of the thesis. Only the
not
references.
All. Only those which you have used for your text.
So those we called references, no, sir?
Yes. There are styles, and you can go by footnotes, you can go by endnotes, you can go by references, you can go by bibliography. There are styles to which you have to move.
Yes, sir. What is the difference between bibliography and references?
Well, when you are looking at the reference, that is, you are contextualizing in the beginning of itself. But again, if you are using the Cambridge version, then you are ending with the references only. If you are going the Chicago version, then you are using name and year in the text, and then you are using the bibliography at the end of it. So you have to decide whether you are going to Cambridge or you are going to Chicago. One of the, or many others, you have to adopt one of the style for presentation of documentation practice. Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
I hope they understood the concept. And is there any question, or we can stop here? I think there is no questions. No questions. So I think thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable time with us. Delivered on the significant topic on how the research proposal can be designed and framed. I'm sure our participants are able to understand why research is needed and how we can identify the area and then developing the proposals. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah.
So we'll end of the session here, and for next session we'll start 11:45 with the same link. So I request the participant, please join with the same link.